everyone, it's me, Miss Peggy. I'm back with another Encyclopedia Brown adventure. This one is from Encyclopedia Brown, Everyone's Favorite Boy Detective Gets His Man. It's by Donald J. Sobel, and the chapter we're reading is The Case of the Million Pesos. I'll read this story today, and then next week I'll give you the answer, and I'll also have that as a video separate. The Case of the Million Pesos. Encyclopedia solved mysteries at the dinner table. He solved mysteries in the garage. He solved mysteries at the scene of the crime. There were no other places in Idaville that he thought to solve mysteries. But he was wrong. There was second base. While sitting on second base, he solved a robbery that had taken place in a country 1,000 miles away from him. Encyclopedia got his start as an international detective during an evening baseball game. His grounder slipped through Benny Breslin at shortstop. Encyclopedia wound up with a double. Tim Gomez, the next batter, ended the inning by striking out. The game was immediately called on account of darkness. The score was 12-3. Encyclopedia sat down on second base, discouraged. Benny Breslin flopped upon the grass beside him. "We were going good," said Encyclopedia. "All we needed were 9 runs to tie." "Well, I'm glad they stopped it," said Benny, a home run hitter. "I've raced around the bases 5 times, and now my legs feel like they're falling off." Sally walked over from first base. She looked troubled. "What's bothering Tim Gomez?" she asked. Encyclopedia. "He struck out 6 times in a row. Something is on his mind." "Baseballs," said Benny. "He fielded every fly with the top of his head. He didn't catch one all game." "Be quiet," whispered Encyclopedia, for Tim was passing near them. "Sorry," Tim apologized. "I know. I played like a cow on crutches." "Forget it," said Encyclopedia. "Aren't you feeling well?" asked Sally. "Well, I'm worried about my Uncle Duffy Gomez," said Tim. "He is in jail in Mexico City." Duffy Gomez was Mexico's greatest baseball player. Why was he in jail? Encyclopedia and Sally and Benny were stunned by the news. "What did he do?" asked Benny. "Well, the police say he robbed a bank," answered Tim, "but I don't believe it." "What does your uncle say?" asked Encyclopedia. "He says that he is innocent," replied Tim. "The police threw him in jail just the same. He's been framed." "By whom?" asked Sally. "By a man named Pedro Morales. He's hated my uncle for many years," said Tim. "You see, Pedro was in love with my Aunt Molly. She turned him down to marry Uncle Duffy." "So Pedro accused your uncle of robbing a bank?" said Sally. "What a low way to get back." "Well, doesn't your uncle have an alibi?" asked Encyclopedia. "Can't he prove that he was somewhere else when the bank was robbed?" "He was at a movie. Nobody saw him, though," said Tim. "Poor Uncle Duffy. He wears a fake beard whenever he goes out in public. If he didn't disguise himself like that, all of his baseball fans would mob him everywhere he went." "Being at a movie is a pretty weak alibi," said Encyclopedia regretfully. "Your uncle will have a hard time making a judge and jury believe him." "The real robber's bound to be caught," said Sally. "Don't you worry, Tim." "There isn't much time left," said Tim. "Uncle Duffy goes on trial next week. Pedro will testify against him." Sally glanced up at Encyclopedia for help. "Now here's the picture. He says he's an innocent man," replied Tim. "Okay. Then, don't ask me," mumbled Encyclopedia. "You can't say no," urged Sally. "Give it a try, Encyclopedia." "Well, I can tell you everything about the case," said Tim eagerly. "I've read the newspapers, stories from my uncle that he sent us from Mexico." Encyclopedia considered the problem, namely, trying to solve a bank robbery in Mexico while sitting on second base in Idaville. "You can't do Tim's uncle any harm," said Sally. Encyclopedia couldn't argue with that. "You win," he said. "Tell me what you know, Tim." "Well, the National Bank of Mexico City was robbed last month by 2 masked men. They got away with 1,000,000 pesos in 1 peso bills," said Tim. "That's about $80,000, exclaimed Encyclopedia. 2 weeks later," continued Tim, "Pedro Morales says that he passed my uncle's house. It was late at night. There was a light on in the living room. Pedro says he saw my uncle arguing with another man." "Did Pedro overhear what was said?" asked Encyclopedia. "Yes, the window was open," replied Tim. "Pedro claims my uncle said that he had counted the money again that afternoon. His share wasn't half the 1,000,000 pesos. It was 1,000 pesos short." "What happened next?" said Sally. "According to Pedro," said Tim, "the other man got excited. He threw some of the money into my uncle's face and shouted, 'There's 1,000 pesos. I never want to see your ugly face again.'" "How did Pedro know they were talking about the stolen money?" asked Encyclopedia. "Well, Pedro says that he didn't know then," replied Tim. "Some of the 1 peso bills the man threw at my uncle flew out of the open window. Pedro picked them up. On a hunch, he brought them to the police. The numbers on the bills proved that they were stolen from the bank. If Pedro had some of the stolen money, said Sally, he must have had something to do with the robbery himself. I agree, said Encyclopedia. Pedro lied. His story just doesn't add up. What was Pedro's lie? Now, that's the end of the story, and I will come on another video next week and give you the answer. So you can either type below what you think the answer is, or you can just keep it in your head, or maybe tell your mom, and then next week whenever we read the answer, then you'll see if you were right or not. Thank you. Have a good week.